Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Geoff Monin.
And I am Maddie K. Stormageddon.
And you're listening to episode 206. And this episode, I know we took you far away, but we're trying to help you, okay? You listen for a little while, and we're all going to be fine. Just hop around, little froggy. We are here talking about the recently released game, Big Hops, from Luckshot Games. With us to talk about Big Hops is the founder of Luckshot Games and the director for Big Hops, Chris Wade. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, hi there. Happy to be here.
I'm really excited to chat with you, mostly because I'm a 3D platformer sicko. And so, we love to welcome one of our own. But also, Big Hops was one of those games that I remember seeing a trailer for at some point, and then, it just fell out of my brain. And then, friend of the show, Jacob Price over at the Pre-Order Bonus Podcast, shared their review of it. And I went, wait, this is out? Oh my God. And so I reached out to you if I could have a review code, got to write a review, and I loved the game. And then immediately I was like, wait, do you also want to come talk about the game? And you were gracious enough to join us. So we're excited to have you. So I think my first question I want to start with is Luckshot Games is a game development studio that you started. Your debut title was Sausage Sports Club, which I've watched a lot of videos of and it's very fun. What brought you to game development? Obviously, you have a passion for platforming and platformer games, but was game dev something you've always wanted to do, or did you just kind of find it as something that was possible?
When I was a kid, I played a lot of games like anybody else. I feel like a lot of game developers have this story of being kids and they played games. And then for me, once I kind of got to be a teenager and started playing more like PC games, I grew up with like Nintendo stuff, eventually got a PlayStation and Xbox. But in high school, I was playing like Valve games like Left 4 Dead and Half-Life and Portal and stuff like that. And the Portal 1 developer commentary, finding that was like a whoa moment that there's like people inside this game that made it and they're talking to me. Me and my buddies were really into Left 4 Dead and made some mods. And I say that very generously. We downloaded Hammer and then like hit our heads on it a lot. And I was the most persistent with that, I guess. So we like failed at making mods, played a lot of mods. And so it was like, okay, this is something people do. And like random people like us like upload stuff and then people play their games. And that's pretty exciting. So when I got to college, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I had some inkling that games was cool. And when I sat down with the list of majors, I kind of looked through them and was like, okay, games is the only one that makes me not want to off myself. So like, let's try this.
It's a good way of making a choice. Which one do I hate the least?
Yeah. I basically started college, did like a semester of like the game design focused degree and was like, okay, I have a knack for this. I find this really interesting. Made a few board games in classes and then did like a game jam after maybe 9 months of being in school. And I was like a pixel artist for like a platformer game. And we came in second place and I was like freaking out. It was so exciting and so fun. And doing it in classes and stuff is really, really like slow and not intense. And doing it in a game jam kind of setting was like, whoa, this is really interesting. And like, I'm making really good friends with the people on my team. And this is so fun. And we just like spit ideas out. And then there's like a game, the next day or two. So
yeah,
that kind of hooked me.
Which would you say was closest to kind of the making the mods days in high school for you? Throwing yourself at projects in college or the like last minute have to solve problems of a game jam?
I guess the projects would be because it's not a super fixed timeline on it. So you can kind of like blue sky and like outscope your capabilities more easily.
In looking at both of the games that your studio has put out, they have a strong emphasis on having fun with physics, whereas Sausage is a lot more how things just kind of go. Big Hops is much more putting it to a 3D platformer. It almost feels like you had to kind of rein yourself in to make the platformer happen.
I guess I kind of started at a place of like, I want to make a really advanced character controller and like let it do all of these things. The first maybe year and a half of the game, I was working alone and had no other partners on the game and just was like making a character controller and like continuing to add stuff to it and didn't say no to anything that sounded cool. After that year, I had sort of this like pile of stuff and like pile of things you could do. The tongue was in there, the veggies were in there, climbing walls, using the backpack was all like in the game. And I would show it to friends, and they would play for about an hour and then hand the controller back to me and be like, what do you do? Like, what is this game? And I was like, ah, damn, I thought that was the game.
I mean, there's a whole Miyamoto thing of like, you make Mario fun to control and then you make the game about it, and you were focusing on the character.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wouldn't say it was very intentional of like, I'm going to just iterate here until I have enough ideas to make a game. I sort of didn't have a sense of what the game structure would be, and I just kept having ideas, and I was like working a day job at Alchemy Labs in Austin, which is like a VR studio that people would know for Job Simulator. There were no stakes really. It was just like I knew I wanted to make another game, and I just had ideas for new gameplay paradigms and stuff. I didn't hold myself back from making stuff, and almost all of my games have been physics games. Alchemy games are physics games, and Hops was kind of a response to working in VR where you're like not allowed to let the player move or they'll get motion sick. And I was like, let's go the completely opposite direction and make like the most movement possible.
Well, and the first time that the perspective absolutely shifts. Yeah, no, if that was in VR, I feel like OSHA would call.
Right. Yeah, right.
But no, it's a lot of fun once it's a third person perspective. It's funny too, where a lot of times when 3D platformers come out nowadays, they tend to get compared to previous generations, older games. And really a big heyday of 3D platformers was like the Nintendo 64, when there was absolute crap for camera control or a lot of how we latch onto objects or aim for anything. It sounded like you had a lot of just, you're iterating, you're moving forward. You were following what was the most fun. You were following what was the coolest thing. Was there ever a conscious point of, I'm not going to fall into this, XYZ trap because I didn't like this when I was a kid and I'm going to fix it now?
I think for me, it was the other way where I'm like obsessive and the standard I held myself to is really high. And so I think a lot of indies are like, I'm going to make the best platformer controller I can make and like that'll be good enough. But for me, I was like, for the first year, I was playing all of them, and I would play Mario Odyssey and be like, I'm just not on this level, and I would write down 10 things that I observed from Mario Odyssey, and then I'd go, add not add the move set, but like the coyote time where you like walk off a ledge and then you can like jump in that time, or like input buffering so you like can jump before you land and then you'll jump. That kind of stuff I just like observed from the best of the best, and then was like, okay, let's just keep doing this as much as possible.
The first thing I noticed when I first got hands-on with Big Hops was that it feels different, but it feels like an evolution of what came before. Like the obvious thing is like the running dash jump, and when you slide, you jump out of it, you get a longer jump.
Yeah.
There's a level of obviousness to like if you've played a game before like this, you'll understand. But then there are other moves where like this seemed like an obvious transition and it actually works a little differently. It's funny we even mentioned the camera too, because the first thing I ever noticed playing any platformer ever, especially in 3D space, is the camera, whether it's a problem or not. And in most 3D platformers, it's a problem at some point just because physics, you can't predict everything. But I never felt that with Big Hops. It sounds like you really made an effort to make sure the camera cooperated. And basically, no matter where I stood, and there are tons of stages where you're standing above something, next to a wall. In most games, the camera would freak out or get stuck. It seemed to always have somewhere to go. And so it seems like you made a conscious effort to like make the camera as cooperative as possible.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. That was another thing we were really obsessive about. There's another programmer, Eli, who worked on the game for a long time. He would give notes. I would give notes. There's a really great, I want to say it's a GDC talk about it. It's like the programmer responsible for the camera in the game Journey made this like 30 things that suck about your camera sort of GDC video. And we studied that like religiously, seriously. And the sort of rule was like no pops allowed. It was even as late as like 2 months before the game shipped that we were still iterating on aspects of the camera. It's a job that never ends. And the thing I'll say is that I don't remember reading a single review that mentioned the camera. And I think that's a huge win.
I would agree.
Yes.
Yeah. And like it's funny too, because the movement, you talked about how you drew from inspirations and like, everything has a stamina meter now, but at one point it was only a few games did. Now it's pretty common. But like even still, to take a mix of stuff like being able to climb walls, gather items that help you platform, and platforming with your tongue all together made it so I definitely solved platforming puzzles that you created for me without any intent of the way you wanted me to do it. based on what I had in my backpack or what I'm doing. And I love that kind of freedom in a platformer. There's fun to be had in precise platformers without a doubt, but I struggle with them because there's one path, you have to nail it perfectly, and if you don't, you die.
Those tend to work better in 2D.
Right. And I just never felt that with big hops. It seems to me like it was very important from the beginning that you wanted to give the player a freedom and maybe make it even, it feels to me, even more beginner friendly than a lot of 3D platformers.
The original like thesis of the game was like in 2019, I had played Breath of the Wild somewhat recently and I played Mario Odyssey somewhat recently. And Breath of the Wild, like the thing that stood out to me about that game that's so special is like when you go into these dungeons, you can like see the thing they want you to do maybe, and then there's like a dozen other ways to do it. And like exploring the edges of the possibility space are more interesting. And like I did that a bunch of the time. In Mario Odyssey, I would get bored, you know, especially on subsequent playthroughs of like doing the bespoke thing that they want. And the design thesis there is really good in Mario Odyssey of like every 5 minutes, we're going to like introduce a new thing, explore it for 10 minutes and then throw it away. I think the onion guys that like you stand up on the really tall legs are really cool. And I want to see a little bit more of that, or like put it in a different context and like see what happens. I saw this like design space in between those two games and was like, nobody is stupid enough to try this, so I will do it.
Many good ideas start that way. I like that.
Yeah.
I also realized that we have been talking about this and going into this, and for anyone who is listening who has not played or seen Big Hops, and this is their first time hearing about it, what is sort of the quick pitch on it for people?
Big Hops is a 3D platformer where you play as a frog and use your tongue to swing around, grab things, and solve puzzles.
And now that you've said Breath of the Wild, I do see the influence in the fact that you very quickly unlock climbing and you have a little bit of a stamina meter, but because you have jumping and you have the sort of Mario-style platforming, it's not quite so precious, let's say, that it is in Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, that is your sole means of heavy traversal. You have long jumps, you have rolling, you have sliding. The first time we learned belly sliding, and it was just like, oh, this is the castle halls, but I'm in a desert, was delightful.
Right, yeah.
The funny thing about that too is right at the beginning of the game where they basically teach you to belly slide to gain momentum. You also, one of the first upgrades you get from Dis is you can choose a speedometer that tells you how fast you're moving. It's almost like from the very beginning of the game, you're going, hey, if you want to go fast, you can go fast. Chaining it together, it got to the point where I was just pressing jump and dive at the same time and seeing how fast I could go. And like getting across the desert area, especially, it was like vital, it felt like, because it's just such an open area. And I love that even in a game where you can climb and take your time, or you can jump and swing, you also added a, let's say, Sonic-like momentum of like this platforming to make you go faster. And I think it's such a fun mix of things that makes it stand out and feel unlike any platformer I've played before.
Thanks.
And I will say that it did allow for me to have something to fiddle with when I was running long distances. Never underestimate the ability to just do a thing while you're running. Whether it makes you faster or not, I will endlessly roll through. It's that whole Dark Souls feeling. You know, I'll dodge roll all the time, even if I'm not dodging, just because it's like, yeah, pushing buttons, going distances, and it feels good.
A fidget toy in a game is important to me.
Extremely.
Something that I want to talk about because I'm fascinated. There's an assumption for a lot of indie games that when you play them, because the budgets are smaller or whatever, a lot of other reasons, that there's not always a ton of voice acting. Sometimes there's some one-off voices or gibberish, like in the Banjo-Kazooie games. But your game has full voice acting, which was very exciting for me because I love voice acting, but also because one of my favorite voice actors of all time plays like 8 characters, as he does in all the games he's in, Steve Bloom. And so like, while there are tons of great voice actors who worked on other projects as well in this game, someone like Steve Bloom, who's been around forever, that feels like a giant get to me. Is there like a story behind that of how he got connected with you guys? First of all, his performance is great. Every time I would encounter him, I know his voice well. So I'd be like, that's him. But he's always doing something different or a different performance to make the characters unique.
So we worked with a great duo of casting director and voice director, Ashley Lambert and Sarah Holmes are their names.
Mm-hmm.
They helped us kind of get a SAG agreement in place so we could work with SAG during the strike and work with SAG union actors. And I think I just told them like, hey, all of your picks have been really great. I would love to talk to Steve Bloom about this particular character if you could get our stuff in front of him. And he actually ended up just like auditioning for like several of our roles. they didn't have to reach out to him individually. They just made sure his agent had it. And I think he just happened to audition. He probably auditions for everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has the Guinness World Record for being the most voices of anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
He strikes me as a guy who's just down.
Yeah.
he's also great. Like everybody we worked with is great, but he more than anybody else was like a one take wonder on almost everything we did. And he was funny and had like unique ideas in it. And
Yeah.
I barely had to give him any direction.
Yeah, I mean, he voices one of my favorite characters in the game. I love Wet, and I love Wet's arc. Wet is an otter who's, let's say, got a vendetta against, well, basically capitalism, which, relatable. But like, I love his performance because it seems like a one-note character at the beginning, right? Just a hard ass. He's pissed. He hates his friend for betraying him. But by the time you finish that section of the game, there's so much more to it. I don't want to spoil how it plays out, but like, I'm sure, like you, Chris, there's a lot of platformers that have a story, but like it's a function to move you through the game. It's not necessarily deep. But what I love about Big Hops is that sometimes it's light and goofy, sometimes it's ridiculous, and then sometimes there's a lot of heart in it. It seems like with these characters, there was an importance in like grounding it a bit and like even having a moral, because I mentioned him briefly earlier, but Dis, basically the quote unquote villain of most of the game, is way more complex than I expected. When crafting the narrative, did it start kind of simple and then become more complex, or did you have this broad idea from the beginning?
What's important to me as a writer, I guess, is like to have nuance and like not stop at like the obvious role it needs to play in the context of like the gameplay.
Mhm.
And I love everything Nintendo makes. Every Mario game is amazing, but story is not a part of those games, and that's fine. And then I also love like all the games Double Fine makes and all
Sure.
the stories and characters and like relationship dynamics there. The reason Double Fine games are resonant for me, the gameplay is good in a lot of them, but the nuance and the like left fieldness or the surprisingness of the worlds and stories and like character dynamics and the amount that they feel real in spite of being in games where the story tends to just kind of be a side piece or whatever. That's the stuff I was inspired by. And so for me, having a grounded world where the characters like are doing their own thing and don't exist only for your sake, and that Hops isn't a chosen hero like Link who's here to save the world. He kind of is, spoiler, but it's not because he's like a special guy. It's because Dis is lonely and like he saw Hop and is like, that guy kind of wants adventure and I need somebody to help me.
Continuing to talk about the intricacies of the game, I've been obsessed with the soundtrack since it came out.
Yeah.
Composer Tom Duncan did an incredible job. It's so funny because in the beginning it feels very, and I say this in my article, very Pixar-like, very full of wonder, very kind of like kids movie-esque, symphonic and light and fun. But then stuff like you have an all-bat punk band in the game who has their own music, which is great. But like by the time you get to the middle of it, it kind of feels a little all over the place in a good way, right? Like every world feels unique, every kind of track feels unique. Tell me a little bit about the process of working with Tom and how you guys put together the soundtrack, because it does very much feel like he had the freedom to kind of do whatever he wanted and kind of pull from whatever inspirations he was feeling.
Yeah, so Tom and I have worked together for just about 10 years now. He also did all the audio in Sausage Sports Club. He and I have this great relationship where I trust him completely with anything he wants to do, and he wants to have feedback and have direction, and I often don't have an answer for him because he's the expert in the domain. The amazing thing about this project, and it definitely shows, is that we got to work on it for so long. Like I spent 6.5 years on it. Tom kind of came in after that year and a half of me making a mess and then got to spend 5 years making the soundtrack. That gave us enough time where each world could kind of have room to like explore different genres. I think the description of the soundtrack on Steam or whatever is like we explored 10 different genres of music throughout the soundtrack, and like the worlds and the kind of stuff you're doing within them are different enough to allow for that amount of difference. It's not like a gimmick. It's like sneaking around in the sewers versus like the beach island in the ocean, like need to be a different genre because they're so tonally different and like the setting and visuals are so different.
Yeah. And genre is so often not really what you need to link together the identity of an entire project. There's far more to
Yeah.
do. Texture, motif, melody. Why not explore? They're completely different worlds and how they feel in all other aspects.
Yeah. I think for us, making it feel grounded and that the music like emotionally matches like the tone of the moment and place was maybe the most important thing. It's not every song is like bouncy or colorful or like matches a platformer adventure game. It's curated to like the moment and what's going on, and I'm really proud of that. I think it's not what people would expect from a soundtrack of the game when you like look at a screenshot of it or a trailer or whatever, and there's like so much volume to it.
You gave yourself plenty of time to make the character fun to control, to develop, for Tom to compose, and for the team to work. At what point did you decide, or was it decided that, like, that's enough, or we need to pull back, or what, there again, it's not a game jam deadline.
So this gets into the production of the game, and there's some things I can and can't talk about.
Sure.
So
Of course.
I'll frame it for you.
Please.
After that first year and a half, I quit my job at Alchemy and then decided sort of at that point we need to find funding and the team will need to grow to make this game. And this was my first rodeo doing this stuff. So
Yeah.
I just kind of hunkered down on the game, made a bunch of stuff, and was like posting on social media at all the time, sharing what I was doing. And eventually we started having some stuff kind of pop off, and some publishers started to reach out to us saying like, what is this? What are you doing? We came to find a partner who was like a really great fit and understood really well what we were doing. And we had a really great partnership with them for a long time. And we ended up parting ways about a year ago. Obviously, I can't get into
Of
that,
course.
Right.
but
Sure.
the relationship we had with them was really great. And they supported everything that we were doing and wanted to do. And they never once told us no in terms of scope. They never asked us to cut anything that wasn't for like a really great reason. Yeah, they were amazing partners, and the game wouldn't be what it was without them. So even though I can't, talk about it, that was a good experience. And the thing that really kind of got us on track to finishing the game was after, we signed with them, we had like a long period of exploration. And over the course of hiring people, the team kind of got to a big enough point where everybody joining was like more stress on my shoulders about, everybody joined and was like, what are we doing? What are we trying to make? And up until that point, my design sensibility was like, if we answer too many questions too early without knowing as much as we possibly can about the design space, we might back ourselves into a corner where we like
Yeah.
can't possibly make a good game. So I spent, I will say, too much time telling everybody like, I don't want to decide that yet. Like let me like fidget with that a little bit more and like try to figure it out. The biggest thing was like the structure of the game. There was a long period of time where we thought it was going to be sort of like Dark Souls 1, where it's like everything is like connected by hallways, and like if you know where to go, you can like go to anywhere in the game at any point. Sort of like a Metroidvania, but like Dark Soulsy. And we tried to build that, and as we were figuring out the story and decided like, no, we do want this to be not linear, but like the episodic structure that it is. Once we kind of figured that out, it was like, I can't go from the desert to the ocean and then back mid-story. Like it doesn't make sense, and players are going to forget what they were doing and get lost. We kind of had this moment when we hired enough people that it was really important that we were like super clear on the structure and like what milestones we were going towards. We had to sit down and look back at the game and look at this idea of what we thought it might be, and then like what was actually working about it to make a story that makes sense and is resonant and has like clear direction or whatever. Our reference point for that was kind of looking at Breath of the Wild and saying like, this does not hit the notes. Like this does not work for us. And the reason it doesn't is because it's trying to be an open world game and let you do things in your own order. And that's like directly against the idea of like getting to know something and having a curated experience. So we looked back and okay, what did old Zelda do? And it was like sort of like open spaces. And then you kind of get like squeezed into not a hallway, but like a linear section of game. And then within those linear sections, you kind of get the narrative that you need to make sense. So that was like a much more clear structure for us. We don't think of each of the worlds as like dungeons, but you could kind
Sure.
of compare them to dungeons. They're obviously bigger in scope and like more expansive in terms of you're like visiting all these subworlds or whatever, but you could argue that each one is dungeon like.
I'm reminded, too, of a lot of PS2 platformers, like playing Ratchet and Clank and going from planet to planet, where sometimes there is a bit of travel back and forth, but they are their own self-contained spots that you can, within that, traverse as you like. It's a little less open world and a bit more segmented sausages. You kind of can play around within this area and then sort of go a little back and forth. I definitely think that does work out for the better. If you give too much of an open world, there is analysis paralysis. You do lose that curated experience. There was a point where when the first time we got the trinkets about improving the belly slide, it was between that or anything is edible. And I went, I haven't really done much belly sliding. I'm going to make everything edible. And then I went and found out the race for belly sliding and went, I have screwed up tremendously. It's fine.
Yeah.
I got over it. But if you make too many things open at once, it then becomes that matter of like, okay, we're getting these trinkets and getting these little improvements to our character. What do we improve? What do we pull out of here? What are all the possibilities? Whereas in an early section, you need to get 3 of something, and you can get those in whatever order you want. You just kind of explore a little bit. It's that push and pull of open design and choice.
Yeah.
To the sense of choice and to character, there is a lot of fun in the dialogue, in the writing and in between, and Hop gets a lot of opportunities to kind of choose what he's saying, even if he doesn't necessarily get to choose what he's doing. You got to get 3 of these, you got to go over here, and you can be kind of bad or you can be a little bit of a jerk. Again, it's a bit of a link thing, a bit of a what have you. What were some of the choices you were making in letting those dialogue choices happen? They don't necessarily affect the narrative, but they affect how you feel about the narrative.
Yeah. We talked about this a lot. Our intent was to kind of make them expressive. Like the player is whoever they're talking to, they're gonna like them or not like them, and we wanted to make sure that the range of sort of reactions that the player might want to have was kind of covered. You mentioned Wet earlier.
Yeah.
His counterpart Axton. When you meet Axton, everybody's like, "Screw this oil rig company owner guy. I don't want to help him." That was the feedback we were getting as people were playing through, and I was like, you know what, they're right. Like, it was kind of confusing people that there is a character in the game who's like an oil baron who talks to you. People understood that to mean that we as writers were like pro oil or something. And I was like, those are 2 very different things. And like, how can we like reduce that feeling for people? And letting Hop literally like talk shit in the conversation at him, like really helped people feel like, okay, the game's not forcing me to be like a oil baron stooge or whatever.
You can say screw you every now and then.
Yeah.
I mean, what I love about Hop as a character is that, you know, when you're playing as a Mario or a Link, you kind of just go along with it, right? You're the hero and you just kind of go along. Whereas with Hop, especially with Dis, there are plenty of times you can go, what the hell are you talking about? No, absolutely not. I don't want to do that. And I love that. Without spoiling it, but there's a reason why Dis is doing what he's doing. And it adds to that moment. Whether you're nice to Dis or mean, it really leads to that late game moment and gives it gravitas. I love Hop feeling like his own character. To that end, you get a lot of customizable outfits, and there are also a bunch of collectibles in the game. First of all, as a 3D Collectathon fan, I do want to thank you, though, for not going overboard, because I have limits. But, like, I love the bug collecting. For those who haven't played the game, when you find a new bug for the first time, Hop holds it up in, like, a very Zelda style, like, you know, I discovered a thing. And then you rotate it as Hop talks out, like, what it is to remember what kind of bug it is. And it's a cute moment, but it also kind of adds a weight to these things that you're now looking for. Was collectibles as a thing you can find, because there's also other collectibles within the game as well. Was that always part of the plan, or did that come after like the platforming and other things?
I mean, it was always there. I think there's a point maybe 2 years into development where I made this insane spreadsheet. And I say insane like I'm an insane person, not like it's very cool. Spreadsheet of like every platformer that I had played. And there's like 20 or whatever on there of all the ones you would think of. And I sort of broke down into columns, like what are the features that all of these platformers have? Stories there, and collectibles are there, and combat is there, and all of these elements that all of them have. And collectibles, all of them universally have this. And it's like, what would you know, that's like one of the core verbs is like, as you're exploring, like the thing that's going to make me go over there is seeing a thing that I want. So like, obviously you want to collect stuff. The thing I'll say we thought about a lot and was really important to me was that every collectible that you find needs to do something for you. It can't just be a dot. It can't just be a checkbox on a list. And I think we were pretty successful at that. There's rewards for everything, like the trinkets, the costumes, the bug collection, you know, gives you a bunch of Animal Crossing style rewards for like hitting thresholds of the different bugs and stuff. Even the mixtapes that you find are like playable in like a mixtape player, so you can like choose the music and stuff.
I mean, I will honestly say collecting cool bugs in a video game is its own reward. And
Yeah.
hearing all of Hop's commentary on them, it felt so little kid. It was great, which
Yeah.
I also
Nice.
found just a wonderful little character moment. I mean, I'm also saying this as somebody whose experience playing Breath of the Wild for the first time was annoying the hell out of my partner for the first hour and a half because all I did was cut grass and catch bugs. I'm not somebody who like
Classic Zelda experience.
exactly. That's what I thought. And she was like, "There's shrines over there." Like, yeah, I'm going to get to those, but how many more bugs are here? I want to get as many as I can. Like, I want to find all the ones that are up on the
Yeah,
plateau. The shrines are going to be there, okay? I've been asleep for 100 years. The bugs aren't going to last that long. I got to get them.
Mhm.
There is a nice joy in the feedback loop of found a cool thing and get there. Absolutely.
Thanks.
I also want to comment on something you mentioned because I think it was the most striking thing to me about this 3D platformer. You mentioned combat, and there really isn't any in this game.
No.
Like, there are a couple bosses, but they're all basically puzzles to solve. None of them are like combat in the traditional sense of most 3D platformers.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really refreshing. I like combat. I like fighting in games, of course, but I thought it was kind of fun to not have to ever worry about that. Just worry about the platforming. Like, I never had to worry about avoiding enemies or dying from being attacked, only from falling in a pit 18 times. Different problem. And so, like, I really liked that. Was that always a conscious choice, too, of like, I don't want combat. I want this to mostly be focused on the platforming? Because it feels perfect. Like, there's never a moment where I go, oh, I wish there was combat. It just kind of feels part of this world and pretty natural.
Thanks. Yeah. It was pretty early that I was like, could this be possible to do this and have it work? It's kind of a couple ideas. Like, one is I'm sick of playing indie games with like a 3-hit combo and like mid combat.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I understand why that ends up being what games ship with, especially indie games on like a tight budget.
Yeah.
But the thing that's special about indie games is that we get to be outside of the standardized genres and like do our own thing. And like, I know personally, like I don't have the expertise to make amazing feeling combat on the level of like a Dark Souls or an Elden Ring or whatever. And so many games do an amazing job at that stuff, and we just can't reasonably afford to do that and also all of the other things in Hops at a high level. So I was just like, do we have enough stuff without it? And pretty early on, when I was prototyping tongue mechanics and writing down like all the ideas, all the possible ideas of tongue interactions, I was like, I think if we, instead of designing our levels based on like placing combat encounters, if we like placed tongue interactions around at sort of a similar density, and obviously like platforming and collectibles and NPCs with like interesting stories, and there are other ways to accomplish pacing besides combat. And I was like, let's try and do this, and like let's check our pulse to see like how good we are at it as we go. But it never felt missing. And
Yeah.
when the pacing felt slow or like there wasn't stuff to do, there was always another answer besides combat. And at some point in the development process, you're like, well, we can't add combat now. Like we don't have 3 years to like iterate on combat anymore.
Yeah, a little too late.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think one of the reasons why combat can happen in a game is because there is a very easily transferable satisfaction loop of overcoming a challenge or simply engaging in something akin to a flow state. You have those 3-hit combos, you have the back and forth of whatever the chain that you're having happens. But platforming and action games or what have you have the same sort of loop of traversal. And there again, like you were saying, having the fidget toy for moving around is fun to do. And like Matt was saying before, getting into a little bit of I'm just going to belly slide and jump and see how fast I can go, while also looking around with the camera, seeing what you can find, also creates a sense of flow and satisfaction. And yeah, the tongue interactions, once somebody who has experienced enough with 3D platformers, like any of us sitting here, it isn't as fast, but you always have to, with every new platformer, get the sense of the momentum, the tongue interactions of swinging. Okay, where's the best part of that jump? When is the best time to jump out of the belly slide? They create the same kind of dopamine hit as overcoming combat, and that does get talked about, but it's often ignored in the greater conversation.
Yeah, I agree. It's like a nuanced thing. And as a designer, it's very hard to, I mean, Hops is purposefully pretty lightweight on tutorialization of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to teach somebody like about what you're saying about grapple swinging, that there's like a correct distance, or not correct is the wrong word, but like a better distance where you're going to hit it with a better swing. And it was a bit contentious for us in development. Like, do we Spider-Manify this so that you can hit it from any range and have the same amount of good swing and like don't need to think about it and don't need to release at the right time? And I was always like, no, like we're not making, this game isn't for mass consumption. It's for people who want to engage with movement dynamics.
Yeah.
And like, that's okay. And if somebody's bad at that, there's other games for them. And also they can like learn a little bit by playing this one.
Yeah.
Because it's very generous and forgiving on purpose too.
Right.
Well, yeah. I mean, the first area in the desert where you wake up, anytime you fall from swinging, you're not falling into a pit. You just fall to the bottom and have to like climb again. And so you give people that moment to kind of learn with minimal, and even when you die, you lose half a heart, whatever it is. Like the friction is minimal in the beginning, so you can really get a sense for it. Speaking to the tongue physics, I will say it took me an embarrassingly long amount of time to realize I could eat the flower petals to collect them. And so I was walking around picking up each and every flower petal for like the whole starting area. And I was like, this can't be the only way.
If I couldn't catch all of them before they hit the ground, I took it as a personal failing.
Yeah.
Like I'd move on with my life, but I was like, oh, I'll get them next time. Just you wait.
Yeah.
It's a very fun. Although I do have to ask, with a combat-like game like this, what was the decision for having life bar, having hearts?
I'll say that was sort of a genre convention that we just didn't think too hard about.
Yeah.
I think the earliest version of the game probably had some kind of a health thing.
Fair enough. Like you were saying, you are challenging a lot of the ideas of, and yeah. Okay, you start off with 3 hearts, you got 6 chances to fall in a pit, and then you just get kind of a quick like, nah, you can do it, buddy, or come on, you can do better than that, and off you go again. It is just a slightly longer piece of friction, but it also allows for little bits of character. It reminds me a little bit of the first Prince of Persia game, Sands of Time, where you get the kind of like, no, wait, that's not how that happened. It's another moment for character.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's a sense of stakes and tension that you do need, and it's like, even if somebody who's been playing games for 30 years or whatever realizes how generous we are, and that like the checkpoints are always within like the last 2 minutes of gameplay or whatever, like for the young kids it's their first platformer, like the feeling when you have half a heart and you need to clutch this moment or you're going to see the game over screen, like you do need that for it to be exciting still. It's like a simple sort of subtle, brain trick or whatever, but it does work and matters a lot, I would say.
Yeah, very much so. And there's also just as much, again, as somebody who's played a lot of these games, I'm not a youngin' about this, the times where you do get nice and high up in an area, there is still very organic tension. The first times that I was like learning how to climb and learning kind of the extent of how far I could jump and work in an area, I do want to say that the lack of tutorializing was kind of freeing, because yet again, it didn't feel like, there's only one way to do it. And no matter what, when I play a game, I go, am I doing this wrong? Don't worry about it. Am I up there? Cool, I can do it. There was a very early climbing challenge where I freed somebody after burning down the bush, and getting to the top of that was a great joy. Getting towards the very top, like there was those last few jumps, I didn't have to have the threat of losing a heart. I had to have the threat of, you got to do this again if you want to get to the top. And I suppose there is that balance as well of how many times do you give people challenges of, oh, you fell, got to do it all again, buddy.
Yeah, it's hard. That one kind of acts as a tutorial of climbing.
Yeah.
You can climb up weird simple shapes like this, and you just need to like think about where the camera's going to be as you're doing it, and get to know the ledge grab kind of distance.
Yeah, well, it kind of becomes a little different than tutorializing. It becomes acclimating. It becomes a thing of, if you've given challenges where somebody is able to reach it however they reach it, did you get there? Great, we're not going to penalize you for how you did it. Well, then that's an opportunity, without losing hearts with anything like that, for folks to learn how they want to traverse things, how they want to get at it. When there's no one way, you find your way. You did say that there was an insane spreadsheet of platformers that you were kind of working with and in conversation with in your design.
Yeah.
Were there any of those that were surprising to you or like, wow, I'm really thinking about that one a lot more than I thought?
I think Crash is like doesn't have much in common with hops, but was kind of one that I would think about a lot. I feel like he is really memorable, like his attitude and like the spice of that game.
Yeah. Honestly, I would say,
It's like
yeah,
edgy.
Crash Bandicoot's probably like, if I had to pick any of the franchises of PlayStation platformers, that's my big one. And there
Yeah.
again, it is giving a lot of personality in a small amount. What was the process of infusing the personality into what was going on? Like, how many different effort sounds do you give Hop before you're just overdoing it and it's not just the same hop, hop, hop
Yeah.
over and over again, or the game over dialogue or anything else?
I think we did VO for the demo
Hmm.
that kind of launched alongside the Kickstarter, and that was just Dis and Hop, and we got to kind of go back to the VO booth or whatever with those two, and in playing the demo and watching people play it and like playing it ourselves, we got to kind of feel like where does stuff feel missing? One of them was at that time the bug identification minigame didn't have
Hmm.
VO. That felt super weird. And the game over screen didn't have VO and that felt super weird. There was even more moments like one thing I'm not like super satisfied with in the final game is like when you like do dialogue options,
Hmm.
like there's some times where there's only one dialogue option and you have to click through it and Hop doesn't talk for that.
Mm.
And it really should just be that Hop says whatever the line is. And there was a moment where we were like arguing about like, okay, do we want to do the Mass Effect thing where you like choose a dialogue option and then he says a slightly different version of the line that's like expressing the one that you picked? And I was like, no way, that's too slow. It's gonna like slow down the flow of conversation. And people already want to skip through dialogue anyway.
Hmm.
The other option was what we ended up with, where you just pick one and then he doesn't say it
Yeah.
and it just continues. And that can feel a little bit flat in some moments, or like there's occasionally one that's funny that you want to hear Hop say because it would be funny.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And that there's just tension there. It's like we're trying to pick the best of the options, and it's a trade off.
And it always is. Personally, I would say you made the right choice in not voicing the lines that you read and pick. What that is forcing the player to stop a moment and read the response, or kind of, it feels like those times where, well, I really, really don't have a choice on this one, or like a little back against the wall as you are thrown through this adventure and have these interactions. And the amount of times that playing older games where there's a bit of like, okay, yes, I get it. I made the choice. You have said the thing. You've done a different camera angle and you're saying the thing again. You had to load between those two camera angles. Oh my God, what the shit kind of feeling. I would say, yeah, no, there's the occasional moment where it feels like I would have loved to have heard that. But I think it's a much more practical job of flow where you're not hearing it said, but by choosing it, you did say it and the game moves on and play out a lot better and let you enjoy the personalities more than just being like, okay, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
and like, yeah, you never want the player to sigh and go, "Ugh, I'll skip through this."
Yeah. I think the half step we might make still is when you move between the dialogue options, Hop could animate to kind of match the tone of the thing that
Mm.
you are about to maybe pick.
Yes.
And if you like swapped with that, I think that maybe would help.
I agree that it's, yeah, those little pieces of emoting, which there again, it's another piece of play throughout the adventure. And when you give somebody a sandbox, a toy box, there should be great joy in exploring it. I am a slower player of games that give me choice and let me explore because I want to find every seam. I'm going to jump off of everything. I'm going to eat everything. Like,
There's a trinket for that.
exactly. That's the first one I picked. I can eat everything now. Screw the belly slide, but I got that. That's fine later. We fix that later. But it was the first one
Yeah.
I picked. We're just like, well, I've been eating everything. What else can I eat? Kind of feeling.
Right.
And so there again, having those little moments of even just picking between the two options, getting to see that movement. People are going to make animations and dances out of that, or just their own fun. It's allowing for the agency, even when it's a binary choice.
Yeah. You mentioned Mass Effect, which is my activation phrase because my other podcast started as a Mass Effect podcast. And like the one thing me and my co-host would constantly complain about as much as we love that game is I picked this option because I thought it was this option, not this other more extreme version of that option. But I understand why you do that in a game. But the fact that when I picked the thing, that was the thing, and they just reacted as if I said the thing, felt better to me, but also as this lifelong Zelda player and Link who says nothing, like it did lean into that a bit. And also, this is again not a slight on indie games, but a lot of indie games don't have voice acting because it's cheaper. It's one less thing to have to pay for, and depending on your budget. And so I went into this because I hadn't really heard a ton of voices in the trailer that I had watched, that I assumed there wouldn't be voice acting. So when there was, I was pleasantly surprised. And then when there wasn't in moments, I kind of just went, oh, okay. Like I might have noted it the first time it happened and went, why was there no voice here? And then didn't think about it again after that.
A lot of those choices come up in games where you are a silent protagonist. Those are the moments where you are kind of talking at all.
Yeah.
That's it. That's why it's weird, is because he talks.
Yeah.
If he didn't talk, it wouldn't be weird.
Right.
Yeah. But if he did talk during those, it might actually be weirder. It's weird. It's one of those where you're like, it's weird no matter what. This is the least weird.
Yeah. We had like an interesting series of conversations about when Hop drops into a new world for the first time, and he kind of like talks to himself a little bit about what he just saw in the void, or like what he thinks is going on with this. And at first it was some people on our team were so viscerally like, this is weird. Like Link would never talk to himself like this. Hop should not do this. And I was like, okay, this is not Zelda. Let's like sit with this for a while and like living it and like see how, is this the character of Hop? Would he do this? And it sort of over a month of living with it, we were all like, okay, he's a different guy.
Yeah.
We're not used to it because it's not Zelda.
Right.
Exactly.
Or that's not what Zelda would do, but we're not making Zelda. So.
Yeah. Well, to that idea of, you'd mentioned Spider-Man before, Spider-Man being very much an evolution on the Batman Arkham games. And while it was super cool, every moment you could hear Kevin Conroy be Batman. Like, give me more of that. It is weird for Batman to walk around talking to himself. Spider-Man walking around talking to himself, well, that's just as natural as anything. That's as natural as subway delays in New York City. So, yeah, there is that funny thing of having to go, it's not the convention, it's the character.
Well, and that, to me at least, made Hop the character that I liked a lot. There's a limitless amount of snarky mascots, right? The video game world is full of them. But Hop was unique in that he was earnest in a way that I feel like a lot of other characters aren't. And like when he's talking to himself, I, as a little kid, when experiencing something new, would often talk to myself about it, though I probably shouldn't admit that in public.
I still do.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things where it felt very charming to me when he would just be like, what the hell happened? What is Dis's problem? And now where am I?
Yeah.
Like, it feels very kind of hero of a game syndrome, but also very much in tune with Hop being this young kid who is on this adventure that's larger than life. I also really love that Hop was never really scared. He was befuddled often and confused, but there was this sense of adventure. And I mean, it would have made sense for him to be scared too, but for the most part, he was either confused or annoyed. And that also felt relatable as a character, because a lot of other mascot characters are not like that, right? Like, I think Banjo-Kazooie stood out because they were sarcastic, but like Mario basically goes with the flow, unless you're watching the Super Mario Super Show, in which case Lou Albano never liked anything happening ever and was always picking a fight with Bowser. But like, I love that kind of characterization for Hop because it felt unique to the character, and it was something that drew me into the charm of the world.
I think where Hop landed for me, I think of him as like halfway between SpongeBob and like Aang from Avatar.
I can see that totally. Yeah, totally.
Oh my God, yes.
He's like earnest and kind of happy and optimistic, but he also has emotions and can kind of push into the range of like nervous and seriousness.
Yeah, he doesn't have the onus of destiny upon him. We're gonna make the most of this, but I am also still a kid.
Yeah, and people see him that way too. Like Remy calls him a goober, or like there's like the joke about she lies and says they're on a date, and then the guards are like, that guy? No.
And he's like, hey. He's like hurt by it. Yeah, no, I'm
very 10-year-old kid.
Yes, very much.
Right.
Remy was another one of my favorites, mostly because Geoff knows this. I have an obsession with fake bands. Like I mentioned Scott Pilgrim earlier. I love the Sex Bombs. And so like the fact that there is a fake band in this game that has a 3-song EP or whatever is like, or 2-song EP, like I love that. And so like the Gut Bombs now go on my list of favorite fake bands.
That's awesome.
It just adds to the world building, right? Like music, as someone who like loves music and is very big a nerd of music, like whenever there's a fake band in a movie or a video game, that just makes the world feel real. Like when characters in Life is Strange are talking about Led Zeppelin, that's fine. Like I don't mind that, but it's not quite the same as like fake bands we've never heard of with actual songs in that world. And so that was kind of a highlight for me too. And the fact that, though kids today probably won't know what the hell it is, that you have a cassette player, because I grew up with a Walkman. It's like, I loved that too. It just felt dorky on a nerdy music level that is a little bit above and beyond the norm for nerdy music.
No, it's fine. Cassettes are those things that you collect in video games and no one knows where they came from.
Right, exactly.
The mixtape player was called a Hopman until maybe a month before we shipped. And then we were nervous. We were nervous because Walkman's kind of back as a brand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love the idea of Hopman and that, but that's also like, I mean, I guess there were enough Discmans after the Walkman to.
Yeah. It also doesn't quite make sense as a name to translate.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
Mixtape player was like a little bit more clear.
Yeah, totally.
So,
Yeah, and Hot Boy, for anyone who like was old enough for cassettes, that just makes you think of Home Alone 2.
Hop Boy.
Well, the Talk Boy, the little thing that he used for the.
Oh, right, the Talk Boy, yeah.
Well, also Hot Boy makes me think of that McElroy Vine. Hot Boy, Hot Boy.
I love Vine.
I miss Vine.
I miss Vine every day. Yeah, TikTok was never Vine, never could be. Chris, this has been wonderful. Thank you for taking the time to chat with us. I'm so glad that I got to play this game, I got to review this game, and that you've now come on to chat about it. I mean, Geoff, like me, we're always hungering for 3D platformers and 2D platformers. They're some of our favorites. And with a 3D platformer, I feel like just by nature of it being in 3D, there's so many more ways it could, quote unquote, go wrong, right? There's so much fine tuning that's needed. And like, as far as I'm concerned, Big Hops is up there with some of the best 3D platformers I've ever played. Also, now the real dream is true. I see it behind you, but you have a Hop plushie, that's all we all really want is plushies of our favorite characters.
Shameless plug, on the Steam page, there's a link where you can buy one, pre-order one.
Do it. Get those Hop plushies. Thank you for taking the time. Before we go, I'd love for you to tell folks where they can buy Big Hops, where they can find you online and find the game online, and how they can get their hands on it.
We're kind of in a few places. On Blue Sky, I'm Luckshot Games, and luckshotgames.com maybe. If you search that, you'll find it. A lot of places is Chris Wade __. That's TikTok and Twitter and something else. And YouTube is also that. And then Instagram is chriswade.frog. I recently changed. We post like kind of a crazy amount of social media stuff about hops. So if you're interested in just getting like random bursts of hop energy in your feed, like any of those are good. To buy the game, Steam, PS5, Switch, it's on all those platforms. We're still updating it really regularly. You were both very generous to not mention that the game was buggy at launch, and we fixed quite a lot of bugs, and I would say it's very stable now, no more than any other game.
Bugs are for catching.
Bugs are for catching, yeah.
Of course there were tons of bugs in this game. You were supposed to catch them. But
LOL.
Yeah. It's the only thing I want to say about it is like there's a lot of things that you can do in the game, more so than most indie games, I would say, and there just is a lot of room for things to go wrong. So hard to get everything right on the first try.
Of course. And it's fun to explore and fun to find out. And certainly Matt and I have had a fun journey thus far, and I've got more of it to play. And my partner hasn't played it at all yet. She's the big 3D platformer in the house, but she's dealing with a wrist injury. She hasn't been able to play anything for like 2 weeks. She's going a little crazy.
Maybe you could two-hand it. Like
share the controller.
That is how we played Paper Mario.
Nice.
She wanted to show me the game, but refused to fully let go. So maybe that is how we do it. And for her left hand's fine, so she can control all of the movement. But at this point, we put it to you, listener. Have you played Big Hops? Is this your first time hearing about it? What do you look for in a 3D platformer? How do you like to move around? What should characters be allowed to eat? What is Dis's deal anyway? You've got to find out when you play the game. When you do, when you find out, let us know what you think of it. Reach out to us. There's so many great ways to get in touch. We are Fun and Games Pod across all social media that we are active upon, which as of this episode is Blue Sky, Instagram, and Tumblr. You can email us at funandgamespod@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought of this episode, what you thought of previous episodes, what you'd like us to talk about, and who you'd like us to talk with on future episodes. Let us know some of your favorite 3D platformers. What influences you see? What do you think were the 20 or so platformers that were on Chris's spreadsheet? We're not going to get it. We're not going to find out. Maybe we will. I don't know. I'm just thinking of this right now. If enough of you let me know, let's put our own insane spreadsheet together. This is the fun of community. Speaking of community, you can visit certainpov.com and find not only other fantastic Certain POV podcasts, but also a permanent invite link to our Discord server where a lot of these conversations continue. And we have been talking about Big Hops a little bit because, well, Matt and I have been playing it, so we like to talk about the things we're playing. If you like what we do and have the means or desire to support us, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/funandgamespod. There is a free tier, which gives you access to the RSS feed. It allows you to participate in polls so you can vote on what our next console retrospective episode is going to be, or just get a one-stop shop of all the things Matt and I are working on. We are so grateful for all of our supporters, especially those on the high scoreboard. Today, the high scoreboard is Alex Lavelle, Case Aiken, Daniel Nyden, Sean Bowen, Film It Yourself, Patrick Edwards, Alejandro Alves, Curly Bright, and Chris Copleen. Thank you so much for your support. Please enter your initials. It doesn't matter where the letters are, just find them, all right? Jump around, use your tongue, maybe eat one of the mushrooms over there so you can get up to where they are. You're going to love finding the vowels.
And of course, if you don't have the means monetarily to support us, another great free way to support us is by subscribing on your podcatcher of choice and rating and reviewing us there as well. Hell, if you have other podcatchers that you don't use often but access to, like, say, Apple Podcasts, feel free to rate us there either way. All of the ratings and reviews really help us combat the evil algorithm and conquer it so we can hop to the top of the list. And when folks are searching for Big Hops, they'll find this podcast.
Whether you are a fan of 3D platformers, you're a fan of games with frogs, or you just like when Steve Bloom is some kind of badass but adorable animal, his role in Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts is top tier, prove me wrong. Or if this is your first episode of Fun and Games, thank you so much for being here. We couldn't do this without you. This is a conversation. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
And happy gaming.
Do you find yourself playing older games and wishing that there were new discussions about those games? Enter Tales from the Backlog. Hi, I'm Dave Jackson, and on each episode, I'm joined by a guest to break down those games that may be stuck in your ever-expanding backlog. Each episode looks at one game in depth, focusing on mechanics, story, music, and other aspects with no spoilers until a clearly marked spoiler wall in the middle. If you've played the game, go ahead and climb that spoiler wall and enjoy in-depth story discussions, and if not, jump out when we warn you and maybe go play that game for yourself. We have over 100 episodes in the feed, everything from Disco Elysium to Tunic to discussion episodes about how to get into horror games, and if games actually need to be fun, or if they have more to offer. I guarantee that there's something in there for everybody. Once again, that's Tales from the Backlog, available wherever your podcasts are found.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.